Here on LBC, the question is this: will the last socialist to leave Labour please turn out the lights? Keir Starmer is ruling Labour with an iron fist this afternoon, dropping candidates from seats who are politically left of him, who would be more supportive of a Corbyn-led Labour, but who would, based on current polling, still win their seats. Faiza Shaheen, a woman who has stood against Ian Duncan-Smith in Chingford and Woodford Green, ran him very close in 2019, said she was dumped from the candidate list last night. Lloyd Russell Moyle, who had been the MP for Brighton Kemp Town since 2017, announced he had been suspended from the Labour Party and would not be allowed to stand for Labour at the election after what he says spurious and anonymous allegations were made against him. We know the situation with Diane Abbott. There is a feeling that Starmer is being militant in his own way, getting rid of people he doesn't think can win because they are too much of the left. Reality is, I think, Starmer is worried about these folk not because they wouldn't win, but because they would win. Picture the scene. Labour get in with a majority of 20. In that position, does Keir Starmer want to have to horse trade on legislation with a raucous and possibly sizable left wing of the Labour Party who would be out to get him from day one? Starmer keeps saying country before party. It would make his life as Prime Minister a lot easier if he wasn't having to deal with the left wing equivalent of the ERG. Does that offer any explanation for why Keir Starmer's team is doing what they're doing, going out of their way to say to some candidates more of the left, more of the Corbyn wing, the momentum wing perhaps of the Labour Party, no, not you, sir or madam? Is it country before party, or does his management of the party say something about him to the country he wishes to lead? 0345 6060 973. I think there might be some thought being made by Starmer's team to what would happen in the event of a small majority win, and that maybe the ground is being cleared for Starmer to be able to act decisively and puts in difficult legislation as Prime Minister without having to bend to the will of a sizable left wing of his party. I put my theory to Matthew Lazar, who's a senior advisor to Ed Miliband when he was Labour Party leader.
So I think it's a good theory, but I think that no theory really applies to this because it's very much cock up, not conspiracy. What you've had really is a long-standing issue with Diane Abbott that should have been sorted out months ago, collide with the events, as it were, that appear in any general election campaign, with Faiza Shaheen's liking of social media posts and allegations which have come out against Lloyd Russell Moyle. So if they'd sorted Diane out in the first place, the other two would just seem as perfectly normal. I think you're right in the sense that Keir has kept a very tight grip on candidate selections. But for example, Faiza had already gone through that grip and was one of the very few left-wing people who had been allowed to proceed. So it's specifically in her case because of what she did.
And what she did was like some posts on social media, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and they were posts that have caused liking those posts has caused offence to quite a lot of people. The Jewish Labour movement, who have been absolutely pivotal in the reshaping of the party after the dark days of anti-Semitism under Jeremy Corbyn, found those posts unacceptable, and the NEC has dealt with them. I mean, look, there's an argument to be had about whether or not that's enough to ban somebody from being a candidate, but it's not part of a purge. It's part of a specific case. I have to say, Faiza Shaheen's an incredibly impressive media performer. She goes, I'm sure she's regular on LBC. She's been on Question Time, etc. The idea that she naively would like social media posts seems to me a little bit far-fetched. She is a sophisticated enough operator to know that you need to be careful what you're doing on social media, which is a page one, sentence one of what to do in politics if you want to be an MP. So she only really has herself to blame in that sense. She should have been steering away from those and talking about potholes in Chingford.
It's her fault as opposed to a calculated effort by the centre of the party to get rid of people that they are ideologically not in agreement with.
Yeah, it's her fault in the sense that she's responsible for her own actions, and she knows what the rules are. I'm not the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party. I haven't been through all of her social media posts. But if it's found that her social media posts brought the party into disrepute, that they caused offence to people within the party, and they're of recent origin, then that's why the NEC would make that conclusion.
But she liked those posts a while ago, doesn't she?
Well, I'm not sure of the exact dates of those,
Well,
but
all of
I mean,
this should have been, as you say, all of this could have been sorted out a heck of a long time ago.
well,
This is on
she's
the
been the
eve of it.
candidate. She's been the candidate there for some year, I think for about
Yeah.
18 months or 2 years. She was the candidate there in the last election, so she knows what she's doing. But this is not part of a purge. If she hadn't liked their social media posts, she would still be there.
Well, what
And
about the
we obviously
candidates
don't
on
know.
the further to the right of the party who have also said some terrible things on social media? Who have
Absolutely,
been,
and one of them was replaced yesterday.
but
So
several of them
Graham
have been let
Jones.
back in
So
and are
Graham
standing.
Jones, who was So it depends on the specific circumstances. Graham Jones, who, when I worked for Ed Miliband, was a thorn in our side as a kind of voice of the traditional working class right of the Labour
Hmm.
Party. He was the candidate in Hyndburn. He was one of
Hmm.
those caught alongside the then Rochdale by-election candidate in the recording about the secret recording from the meeting of councillors that did for the Rochdale by-election guy, and it's done for him. Despite his local party supporting him, he's on the right of the party. He would be a solid voice for Keir if he was in Parliament again. He hasn't been allowed to stand. He's paid the price for what he did, and that's what anybody has to do.
So your argument, Matthew, is that these are individual cases which have come at an inopportune moment all at once for Labour, playing into a narrative that started with the decision over Diane Abbott, which is now looking like, or being the story is being told that it's a purge of the left. Your argument is this is just a cock-up.
My argument is that if the party should have made a decision about Diane some considerable time ago. Diane is clearly the most high-profile person involved in these. She is of totemic significance as the first black woman MP. I think I'm right in saying the longest-serving black parliamentarian. So Diane and she was a member of the shadow cabinet. So they should have reached a decision about Diane before the election was called with a clear process, and then that would have meant that when the moment we have two, who knows if other cases come up, but the two other cases in Brighton and in Chingford would have just been the kind of events that you get in a general election campaign. We're going to see, other candidates from other parties get into trouble because that's what happens in a general election campaign. There's always one or two people who get themselves in a mess. But what's turned this into on the verge of a crisis is the fact that there's been umming and ahhing over Diane. A decision hasn't been made. And then you've seen two things happen. One, the left of the Labour Party are kind of trying to weaponise it as a purge, which it isn't. And secondly, the Tories are trying to weaponise it as a crisis, which it could be if they don't make a sensible decision about Diane as soon as possible.
Matthew Lazar was a senior advisor to Ed Miliband when Ed Miliband, was leader of the Labour Party. Martin Abrams joins us, Momentum National Coordinating Group member and Labour councillor. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme, Mr Abrams. Do you think that the Labour Party is on the verge of a crisis with all of this? Afternoon.
Well, good evening and good afternoon, Tom. Absolutely. I mean, what your previous caller just said then was completely laughable. I mean, trying to describe the last few days and what Keir Starmer has been doing over his 4 years as Labour Party leader as not a purge is just completely deluded. You know, all these left-wing Labour Party MPs that have either been deselected or kicked out at the last minute, like we've seen with Diane Abbott and Faiza Shaheen and Lloyd Russell Moyle, they are all on the left of the party. Keir Starmer is purging left-wingers. And, what's most telling, that he's purging outspoken women of colour. It is an absolute...
Well, as was pointed out by Mr Lazar, there are also, you can give examples of those on the right of the party who have also been suspended. He pointed to the incident in Rochdale where a right of centre, perhaps right of Labour centre, what do we mean by that? Anyway, a person who wasn't in the Corbyn Momentum part of the party, as you are, Martin, was also suspended from the Labour Party.
Well, if I recall that absolute debacle in Rochdale, Keir Starmer's team and other Labour Party MPs were defending that candidate to the hilt right up until the point that it was completely indefensible. So, that's not a great example. And obviously there will be one or two people within Keir Starmer's circle that will be kicked out. And that is intentional. That will be so the party can say, well, this isn't factional, this isn't a purge, because look, we've treated this person in our circle like this. It is absolutely a purge. And, what happened to Faiza Shaheen it is absolutely gobsmacking. She's been a candidate for years now the party have already done the due diligence on Faiza Shaheen. Okay, she was good enough to be selected in the last election. She's been good enough to be selected for this election. The fact that they've left it right up until the 11th hour, and that is intentional, so that Faiza does not have any chance of really appealing it or reacting to the disqualification as her as a candidate. The fact that they've done that is absolutely disgraceful. It's a slap in the face, not just to people like Diane Abbott, Faiza Shaheen and others, but it is a massive slap in the face to all those local Labour Party members who are essentially being denied their right to choose their own candidate and campaign for their own candidate. This is authoritarianism on steroids. What we're seeing at the moment with Keir Starmer, and I think they're getting slightly drunk on the whiff of power that they can smell.
What is, Mr. Abrams? What is, from your point of view as the national coordinating group member of Momentum, what is the best possible electoral outcome for you at this next general election? What's the best outcome possible?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. We're all campaigning for a Labour government that pursues progressive socialist policies. If you look on the back of your Labour Party membership
I don't
card,
have one.
It's a democratic socialist party. But Keir Starmer at the moment is not doing anything democratic, and the policies that he's putting forward are very, very scant in terms of their socialism.
Well, let me put it to you like this.
I think he needs to go back to basics, Keir Starmer, and realise that he is a member of a democratic socialist party.
Is the best possible outcome for you and your colleagues in Momentum that Labour get in by with a small majority, somewhere anywhere between 0 and 25, and it means that the group of left-wing Labour MPs in Parliament are able to direct the government somewhat about where to go and what to do? Is that not the best outcome as you see it?
Well, listen, I can see where you're going with this, Tom. We're out campaigning as Momentum for Labour Party candidates that have democratic socialist values and will continue to do so.
Would you campaign for Keir Starmer?
We want a Labour government, so we're out campaigning for a Labour government.
Would you campaign for Keir Starmer?
Well, I'm not going to campaign in Holborn and St Pancras because I'm not in that constituency. But we are out campaigning for democratic socialist candidates that we believe have true Labour Party values, because we want a Labour government that will pursue things like public ownership of our utility services, like renationalising.
Play my game for 1 minute, Martin.
That's pouring sewage into
Play my game for 1 minute. I'm Keir Starmer. Mr. Abrams, would you come and campaign for me in Holborn and St Pancras? Deliver leaflets with my face on it, my name on it. Come and bang the door in my name. What would you say?
Well, I'd say, pursue some socialist policies first, Keir Starmer, and stop purging left-wing candidates.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you very much indeed. Martin Abrams, Momentum National Coordinating Group Member and Labour Councillor.